back with you with another amazing conversation with our guest today, Per Sjofors, and we're going to talk about leaving money on the table. I know none of us want to do that. We work very hard and smart in our businesses, so that we want to take advantage and leverage all the opportunities that are possible for us. So I'm very excited to be back with you. I am your host, just reminding you again for all our new amazing listeners, Elona, and I help companies scale their purpose with profits. So without further ado, I know that you're always used to kind of jumping right into today's topic. So let's, Per, thank you so much for being here. And let's kind of jump right into the conversation. Leaving money on the table. What's your perspective on that? How are we
Yeah.
doing that as entrepreneurs and CEOs?
Hi, Elona. I'm pleased to be on the show, and I hope we will be able to give the audience some nuggets of wisdom here. So, the reason why um, most companies leave money on the table is simply because they are very timid in their pricing. They don't know what their customers are actually willing to pay. They may believe that the value that they deliver to customers is lesser than what the customer thinks. And one reason why that happens is that when a company negotiate in any way or form with a client, or put, I should say, prospective client, that client lies, right? They say, no, you're too, they always say, you are too expensive and your product or your service is not as good as your competitor. And if that is your only input on what they're willing to pay, then you're going to end up having too low prices, right? And you're going to leave money on the table.
Hmm. I love this. It's such a common pain problem. Back to what you mentioned, because based also on the work I do, I know that most companies are underpricing their services
Yes.
and products. So it is such a big problem, pain point. But and yeah, I mean, relying more on competition, market trends, things like that. It's what most people usually go with. And
Yep.
then depending on where they are in the journey, it's usually up to the entrepreneur's fears and perception of maybe we're not good enough or we're not offering something that's good enough out there, which kind of correlates to maybe the wrong pricing. So, what are some factors that we can consider beyond just the feedback, maybe direct feedback from the client, which obviously is trying to also create a win win for themselves as well,
Yep.
that we can maybe consider?
Well, the we must understand that everything you do in a company, um, it affects how you can set prices, right? And that include um, how you target customers, right? And just as a lately I've seen a lot on my Facebook feed, right? I've seen a lot of ads for women's underwear. You know, these are people who paying Facebook to show ads that are pretty irrelevant for me, right? So how you target the customers is key. Your messages that you go out to the market is key, right? Because if your message doesn't convey that a correct value proposition, a correct unique selling point, you are not going to attract the right customers, right? And obviously, the the product or service features, functions, and benefit. Some of them will increase willingness to pay and therefore support higher prices, right? Some will not, and a company needs to know which of them do, so that they can use those in their promotions, and also how you how you decide to monetize your product or service, meaning how do people pay for it, right? um, how do what sales channels and what sales methodologies are the most effective in not only delivering value to the customer, but also making sure that the company doesn't leave money on the table. And and likewise, how do you stratify your pricing, which is sometimes appropriate, sometimes less appropriate. But if you have the ability to stratify your pricing, how do you do it in such a way that sales friction is minimized, and the ability to charge higher, more profitable prices opens up at the same time as you make your customer even more satisfied, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So you have to have that holistic or 360 view where pricing is part of a company's marketing mix and whole go-to-market strategy.
I love all the factors you mentioned, and those are definitely controllable factors because on the inside we can focus on a lot of those things, whether it's our messaging, our targeting, our ads, and the unique value proposition, right? What makes you different? What else are you bringing to the table? The minimizing risk and also speeding up results, right? Because I think that's at the end of the day, that's gonna help us with a lot of leverage in our offers. I think
Yes.
having a great offer is absolutely a high important thing, and I call it business model. But whatever it is, right? Having an offer, your business model's got to be positioned really, really well. What about insight factors when it comes to service delivery or product delivery? Is there certain things that we can take a look at so that we can gain some insight or maybe stop leaving money on the table on the back end now when the client is already in the door and now we're actually servicing them?
Well, the you mentioned something that I want to expand a little bit on, and that is the perception of risk that a buyer always have when that buyer is considering making a purchase decision or not. And there is an academic field that we lean on called behavioral economics. So we lean on, and this is all about understanding decision making and particularly purchase decision making. And it has been established without doubt that the a potential buyer is influenced by the perceived risk 2.25 times more than the buyer's perceived benefit of the purchase. And this is of course the reason why guarantees work, and why branding work, because branding is a promise of consistency and value, right?
Mm.
So and that mitigates that risk.
Yeah, I
Right?
love how you connected both branding because when you talk about messaging as well and unique value proposition, having the perception of a great brand absolutely is going to automatically transfer into. And I'll ask you that next. I don't want to go ahead of me, but ahead of myself here. But this whole argument of price: do we lead with price or do we lead with value? But yeah, before we get into that, I'd love to hear your insight regarding the back of the office, so to speak, or like the service and the product fulfillment. Is there something we should be
Well,
intentionally
the I
looking
think that the most important thing to understand is that whole customer experience then doing business with your company, right? And because you do want satisfied customers, right? And let me give you a story, tell you a story on how this should not be done, right? Um, Several years ago, we worked with a digital agency, right, on their pricing, and the CEO came to us and said, "We are really good in closing these Fortune 500 companies, right? And they pay us a lot of money, and because they're so important for us, I put um, um, my best person on as an account manager, which was a vice president, right, for these big accounts, and that vice president was a fairly young and attractive woman, right? And as we also worked mostly with her in this engagement, what happened was that once she got comfortable in the relationship, right, she started to be so foul mouthed that it was absolutely amazing, right? I'm not sensitive to that at all, but this was too much. She couldn't say two sentences without using the F word, right? And of course, that is what happened in all these Fortune 500s that they also have closed, right? This company. So after 6 to 9 months, these large companies cancel the engagement with this digital agency, right?
Mm.
So that is an example of what not to do, right?
Sounds like more professionalism, but yeah, do not do that, right? Keeping your
Yeah,
professionalism and the customer experience, talking about
yeah.
that, it's important.
So it's important once the customer is in the door, is continue to treat the customer as a customer, to treat the customer as a partner, to respect the customer, right? And to make sure that everybody who interacts with that customer really understand the reason the customer bought in the first place, right?
Mhm.
And also continue to, in a sort of a non-selling way, remind the customer of the value that that the company delivers to the customer. Now, obviously, here we're talking about situation where a seller have a longer relationship with a customer. It's not only transactional, right? But even in a transactional um, situation, you want to make sure that the customer is highly satisfied with what you do. So you continue to be a customer. So you buy again, right?
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because it's so true how, with marketing, most companies, it's like hard work to get into the front end marketing and sales part. But then when a customer gets on board, it's sort of like they relax a little bit. But I believe that that's actually where the work begins because
Yes,
we all know how the best marketing is your word of mouth and the testimonials. And talking about building a brand and your reputation is always going to be reliant on the value and the transformation, the result that your customers or clients are getting. So yeah, I
that's
think
right.
it's important. There's so much opportunity with that, with the streamlining of the operations and service fulfillment, of product fulfillment in most companies. That it's like small tweaks or like low hanging fruit that can be tweaked and improved, and it will automatically add a lot to the bottom line because at the end of the day, that's what most companies want anyway. I would love to get your insight on this whole thing of price. Do we lead with a cheaper price in the market? I mean, again, when you are, maybe a startup, you try, you test. That's not really the phase I'm talking about. But when you're more of a seasoned company, you've already established a brand. How do you differentiate yourself so you lead with value and the increased perception of your brand becomes an important priority for you? Having said that, it's obviously because you also have the results, right? It's not just something that you're doing because that's going to fall off, right? I mean, that's the market will dictate someone that's not in it for the right reason, but just more of like a macro level. What differentiates a company that leads with price, the cheapest price in the market, or a company that leads with value and results and high level brand perception?
Well, the obviously the well, this is, if we talk about startups, right? Um, the one of the most common mistakes they do is to go to market with a way too low price, right? Especially if what the company is selling is disruptive in any way, right? And if you have a disruptive product or service, you're only going to sell to early adopters for that reason I just mentioned of risk, right? And early adopters are willing to take a risk because of the benefits that that disruptive product or service has. Um, and because they're willing to take a risk, they are not price sensitive, right? And price does not have lots of influence on their decision. So, and again, a common mistake is that these companies with the disruptive products, they go to market, they sell very little because there are very few early adopters, right?
Mhm.
and 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 a year goes by, and they look at the sales volume and the revenues they promised investors. They look at their bank balance, and they panic, and the already too low price becomes even lower, and a too low price sends a message of inferior quality, right? And we've all been there. So, we hold something in our hands, either physically or metaphysically, and we said to ourselves, I kind of want to buy this, but at this low price, I'm not going to, because it can't be any good. So, new companies with disruptive products should always go out high, right? Because it's always easier to lower the price than it is to increase the price, right? It's not
Mhm.
impossible to increase the price, but it's always easier to lower it, right? And and the if you're more established, um, you have some sense of what the reasons buyers buy, right? But again, you need to understand why they select your product or service versus selecting a competitor. And this is not only price, because, like I said earlier on, everything in your what you do in the company affects how you can price. And it's really important to understand how they decide for a competitor and how they decide to buy your product. Um, and and if you're established, that could be done in surveys, right? Surveys, pricing research, which is what we do in my company. And if you're a startup and you don't have customers or very few customers, and you want to find out what the best price is, here's what you do, right? You identify at least 25 potential buyers, right? These are not your current customers. They're not your current prospects. These are new people, right? And if you're doing a consumer product, right, that may be 25 people in, a couple of Starbucks, right? And you go to them, you describe your product or service, and you say them, now when you understand what I'm our product or service and the value that we deliver, what is a price that is so low that you think that we are going to over promise and under deliver, and for that reason you're not going to buy, right?
Mm.
And then you follow that up, saying, and phraseology here is important. You can't ask them what they're willing to pay. um, and then you say, and then think about the opposite, the flip side. Think about that we under promise and going to massively over deliver. So the product or service is going to be better than you can ever imagine. What is still the price that is so high you won't buy, right? And once you have at least 25 of those short interviews done, you take the average of the first question, the answers to the first question, and the average of the second question, and suddenly you have your price range, right? Not lower than that and not higher than that,
Mm.
right?
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing that because, yeah, I think that's very helpful for more seasoned companies that might be listening as well. And I like your insight about the startup phase and the fact that you can always raise, but lowering your price obviously will hurt some of
Yep.
that perception. And plus, turn people off because they're used to a certain price model or business model that you've
Mhm.
had before. So, all great insights for sure. I'd love to get into the purpose behind your work a little bit, and I know you also have a book out, so I'd love to get maybe like a short form summary of what's inside the book. But before we get into that, what are some of the moments in your journey that led you here? Why is this work important to you?
Well, the reason we do the reason we do what we do is that I ran a couple of companies in Europe before I came here to the US, and I've been running several companies here as well as a hired gun, right? And we did experiments in pricing in all these cases only because it was an area that I was interested in, and some of those experiments worked really well. Like next quarter revenues are up 25%. Others were real duds. And what I learned in business school about pricing was so academic and theoretical that it didn't help us in any way understanding why some of those experiments worked and others didn't. And what I'm saying, an experiment worked. Next quarter revenues are up like 25% or so. And so when I set out on my own, I developed a process that to make every pricing experiment a success. And that is really to go out in the marketplace with, again, something called pricing research, and understand how everything you do in the company affects how you can set prices. And from that, it's possible, not only can the process predict sales volume and revenue at precise prices, but it can also identify the most desirable customers. You can identify the differentiators that leads to higher sales volume and higher profitability. You can identify the whole marketing mix and the whole sales methodologies and so forth that lower sales friction and maximize revenue and profits of a company, making sure that the company do not leave money on the table.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it seemed like you're pretty much what you do today and all the resources that you help others with, it stemmed from your gaps that you've seen in your own personal experience and professional
Right.
experience. So,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, I think that's the way for us to be in integrity. That's the way that we can add value based on something that's not already out there. And I agree with the fact that a lot of these terms are maybe just in textbooks and not really applied. And yeah, there needs to be a lot more education around this, I feel.
Yeah.
Again, most companies are just pricing based on kind of what's on the market and just try to get
Yeah.
by and survive through just ensuring
Well,
that they're competitive.
actually, most there's a lot of companies who say they do market pricing, right? But market price is only available if you sell commodities, you know, grains and pork bellies, right? Because they're published.
Mm,
Even if your competitors have prices on their website, right? Um, you don't know what kind of specials they do. You don't know what kind of bundles they do. You don't know what kind of, I mean, maybe their website is geotagged, so depending on your location, you'll see different prices. Maybe they have systems so that when you come back to the website, you see a different price, right? And so forth. So even that, in that case, you don't know. And if you're selling through no sort of through proposals, there's no way you can know, right? and
exactly.
and and if you ask customers of your competitors, they won't tell you, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So market price is a euphemism for guessing, right?
Mm.
And guessing is probably not the best way of running a business.
Well, the best strategy for anything. All
Yep.
right. Well, thank you so much, Per, for everything that you shared and the amazing wisdom and expertise. I love to end this conversation interview today with maybe a snapshot or a little summary around some of the contents that are inside your book, the title of your book first, and also
Yeah.
a
This is
snapshot
the
of.
book. Yeah.
All right. What is it titled?
Well, it's called The Price Whisper. This is obviously, because I got such a wacky name, right? It's a it's I'd rather use my moniker, which is The Price Whisper. And if you Google The Price Whisper, you'll find me. You'll find my YouTube channel. You find my TikTok channel. You find me and all the various articles are written and so forth. And but the important thing with the book is really the subtitle, which says an holistic approach to pricing power. And this is what the book is about. It is about to understand how everything you do in the company affects your ability to price, and to make sure that you do not leave money on the table.
All right, definitely a must grab. And I love books because of that reason, because it just condenses decades of experience into a book. So, yeah, that's definitely a legacy product. And
Yeah.
where is it that the audience can further find maybe resources or your book? I have your
Well,
website featured on the
yeah.
screen. Is
The
that where
the
I should head over?
Yeah, I mean, the book is available on Amazon, and it's coming out on Audible in a couple of weeks. And I'm actually starting to work on a second edition of the book. The Otherwise, the website has a whole bunch of guides. They are free. They require registration, but they are free. They're also a masterclass in pricing available, and that's something that we charge for. And there are loads of links to articles, loads of links to various other podcasts and so forth, and there are also loads of blog posts and stuff like that, oodles of content.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely encourage everyone to go and check out Bear's website there and his book. And yeah, thank you also for all your time and the amazing work that you're doing out there. I think
Thank
this
you.
is such a big, important piece for lots of companies that especially want to do more good in the world when they can get more leverage with their profit bottom line, then they can use that money also to do other amazing things such as
Absolutely.
philanthropy and other causes that need much attention based on kind of where society is and all of that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, again, thank you so much for being here. And I want to thank you for watching, supporting the show. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review. And I still have a few sponsor spots available. So let me know if you'd like to grab any of those. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you next time with another amazing guest and conversation. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Elona. Thank you. All right.
Are you experiencing these two main gaps in your company and your business? Inconsistent cash flow and clients, and also scalability issues. Maybe you've reached your maximum capacity with your current business model and the way that you're operating your business now, and you are really experiencing burnout and no time freedom in your business. But you're not sure what to do to be able to scale your company to the next level so that your company also becomes an independent asset outside of you so that it can become an asset if maybe later you would like to sell your company or build a legacy company that really does more good in the world. For my dear podcast listeners, I'm offering a free 30-minute discovery call where I will intentively listen to what is it that you've built in your company thus far and then offer my insight around some of the gaps that I can hear from the main gaps that we talked about at the beginning of this conversation that you might be experiencing. And I would love to offer some insight around my experience on what might some of those gaps be and ways to further support you in the future of the scaling of your purpose and profit so that absolutely you can do more good in the world and your company can be independent of its founder and owner and become an asset that also creates amazing momentum out there in the world. For a limited time, I would love to offer my 30-minute time on my calendar for a free discovery call. You can just grab a time on the QSR code right here on the left-hand side of the screen and grab a time so we can further connect. Again, thank you so much for being loyal listeners to the podcast and also for always supporting the show. I'll see you with another episode and another amazing